Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the amazing FBA, the place to be for British-based Amazon sellers, although actually lots of Americans listening as well. This is your host, Michael Veazey. I'm delighted today to welcome a new friend, Teddy Smith, who is an Amazon seller, a consultant and a digital nomad, but currently based in London, so he's nomading near me. So we met up at an Amazon event that we met up recently, and I was fascinated to hear his story, and I said, please come on the podcast. And I'm delighted that he's agreed to come on and share his story. So Teddy, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Um, so tell me a little bit about your Amazon business, because I know you started really recently and things have taken off in a fairly rocket-like way. So when did you get started with your Amazon business?
So we got started properly in last year, 2019. We had sold a few products before that, but not in a very serious way. It was really just testing the water. And then so we started our current brand in June last year. And it's been going pretty well ever since then. There's been a few hiccups, but overall it's been a pretty good experience.
Excellent. So what brought you to go into Amazon? Well, before we get into that, we should probably just talk a little bit about your background. So what did you do as a day job, or do you indeed do as a day job?
Sure. So, since leaving university in 2011, I was a management consultant, and I started at Accenture. So I was working for like big retail brands mostly, uh, uh, mostly as an expert in like e-commerce. So helping big brands do things like um, add a new payment gateway to their website. So I would be talking to the client, getting the requirements, then making sure the development team would build the requirements that we'd discussed. Um, and basically, I got to the point when I just didn't really like my job that much anymore, so I wasn't really enjoying it. So I was looking at businesses I could do, and then I started my first business, which was a photo booth business, which we was did photo booths for like events for corporate bit. That's a lot of branding. Um, and the reason I started that, I think, was originally, I think it was quite a while ago now, but I think it was mostly the events were at the weekend, so I thought I could do it without quitting my job, and it was, I could do it on the side without it being risking my entire career. Um, and then I quit my job, my full-time job, in January last year, and carried on doing that full time. We've since sold that business, and we have, and then it was then that I think I was explaining earlier. I did something like search how to make money online, because I got a bit fed up with doing events like in the city and being tied to one place. So I think I looked at something like how to make money online, and the options I didn't really like. There are things like cryptocurrency and some other drop shipping. I just didn't like the sound of any of them. They sounded quite spammy. Um, and then I came across Amazon, and I thought it was a great idea because I, the, I can't remember which article it was I read, but the way that it was described, it was you can start your own brands, you can build a proper online retail business that isn't just that is a business that is going to be there for the future, essentially. And I just really like the sound of it, and just probably as a lot of your listeners have done, just like kept looking into it and just really like the idea of it.
Yeah, although unlike a lot of my listeners, and I have to say some of my clients, you know who you are if you're listening, that you actually took action, which is great. I mean, so I know you've got some good results. Just give us a bit of a headline result then. So we're talking in March 2020. You started, when did you actually get started with your business then, did you say?
So June, our first product went live. It was the middle of June, so we
That was June
probably
2019 then.
2019.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess we started in about a month before that probably.
Hmm.
Um, we did the research. I mean, we probably did a few months of research, and then finally we just decided what we wanted to settle on. Excuse me. And yeah, so we've been going. What the question was? What your headline figures now? Was it?
Hmm.
Uh, yeah.
Yeah, just to give us a bit
So
of a juice of where you're at, and then we want to see how you got there.
right. Yeah. So our last month we did around £12,000 turnover.
Excellent. And that was in February. then
That was
rather than
That was in February.
Q4. Yeah, great. So it's not even got the Christmas boost, depending on your products. Obviously, they may not be Christmassy products, but so that's obviously quite a serious result. So let's talk a bit about a couple of things I want to dig into. Then, I mean, first of all, congratulations. That's a really swift start that you got off to there, and that's just a reminder of how quickly you can start on Amazon. I mean, to try and get to those kind of sales numbers with your own website off the bat after a few months would be really crazily difficult. So I want to just come back to something you said. You sneaked in there. You said we did a couple of products first just to test the water. But I mean, obviously that sounds like an important step. So tell me a bit about how you went about that.
Sure. So we had a small amount of money that we set aside, um, which I think it was about £1,000 or something like that. Which and we read the Jungle Scout have a blog called the $1 Million Case Study, which basically follows Greg Mercer, who's the guy who runs the company. It follows him basically showing someone who's never done Amazon before how to set up a business. And it's very high level, but it's made in a really engaging way. So it makes you think, oh, I can do this. But it followed the quite classic pattern of find a product in Alibaba, put your own sticker on it, and then get it on made in China, and then over to Amazon. And so we did that, and our first product was these air fresheners, which were called we were made of bamboo charcoal, and they basically take impurity out the air. I didn't even know if they worked, to be honest. It was a bit of a punt, and I sold them, and then um, we didn't make any money, but we got our money back. So we were quite happy with how that went. But we realised that we didn't really want to get into an area that had such high competition, and was also not really it just wasn't the sort of product that I liked. So I just I didn't really want to do that one anymore.
That makes a lot of sense. And by the way, yeah, I guess a lot of us have started with sort of plastic widgets from China that weren't that great. But I really, I just want to say how smart that is to start with, say £1,000 or £1,000, depending which side of the pond you're at, and test. Because I think a lot of people go either sit terrified at the edge of the pool and do nothing forever and research and research and research. And after 3 months of research with no action, I call that just fear masquerading as intelligence.
Yeah.
But the other one is that you don't want to go straight into a 5,000 quid order either in the classic way.
No.
So I think that was a super smart thing to do. So what would you say what did you gain from doing things in that way then? Obviously you got some insights like this
Yeah.
could work and we don't want to sell rubbish. But what else did you say you would get from that?
So, well, the first thing was I think I found for my first product especially, he was quite a big supplier. So he was able to do things like he organised our shipping for us, which I know is not what you necessarily want to do going forward. But as someone who's just starting, it was actually very helpful. But it also taught us things like how you need to do your shipping codes, your tax codes, for example, when you're importing. Um, what It helped us to design photos. So when we were looking at what photos we needed, how we would create infographics, like we actually shipped our products over to Serbia to get them photographed because they were cheaper than getting them photographed over here. But now I've realised I can probably do if I get a good photoshopper, which we have now, then you can for the most part you can do it like that. So that was something I learned. I guess it would be quite difficult if you're doing clothes or something like that, but with a product that was static, it didn't really need to be photographed there and then. I don't think.
Yeah, so I mean, there's always different ways of splitting up different processes, aren't there? And as you say, that the post production, as I would call it in photography, can be something you'd outsource, whereas the actual photography itself, depending on your setup and lighting, you might be able to do yourself. I mean, I
Yeah,
would say it really does come down to how competitive the area is, because some areas you just need to have really, really top quality photography.
yeah,
But if you're just doing a test product, as you say, it makes sense to not overpay. Although Serbia is an interesting one. Serbia is somewhere I've got several very intelligent people to do mostly web
yeah.
design or I would call them not WordPress developers so much as I can't remember what the word is. What you put different things together. I mean, from my point of view, a developer and photographers as well. I've had a Polish photographer. Eastern Europe's full of some smart people, right? It's underused if you're
Yeah.
based in the
All,
UK.
all,
All right, but sorry, I'm interrupting. But so
all
there's
our
quite a lot of
all our
insights. So
freelance we use.
So they're based in
Also,
Eastern
what I was
Europe
going
as
to say,
well.
all the freelancers we use are actually from Eastern Europe.
Hmm.
Yeah, because the time zone is good and their English is good, and I just find them very reliable.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I'd say the same thing. Quite a few American development companies, as in software companies, use developers in places like Ukraine, Moldova, whatever, Eastern Europe, Serbia as well. So they're just yeah, good quality workers, I would say. I mean, to anyone
Yeah,
who lives in London, that's no surprise because London's been run by friendly Poles and Serbians and Romanians and what have you for the last 20 years, right?
yeah,
But we won't even get into that one. Obviously, one of the insights you got from your test launch is that you realized you didn't want to sell any old widgets that you didn't care about. So how did you come to decide on the actual product range that you now sell?
yes. So when we were initially looking for products, we realised that a lot of people were sourcing products from China, and I went to India quite a lot when I was working at Accenture. So I know that they had a lot of manufacturing there as well. So I thought I would look at other countries to source from. Um, so we kind of went down the country route first and tried to find websites that source products um, from other areas. There's by listening to podcasts like Retail Without Borders and the sorts of people that were exhibiting at that, um, those sort of shows, and then so it basically just looking deep into the internet from like different sourcing websites, and just trying to find different suppliers of all sorts of handicrafts and things like that. Um, and so we've ended up finding a few suppliers who did really good, high quality stuff. Um, our first products we actually got made in Vietnam, um, and that one it's all made of like natural materials and was handmade. And we didn't actually visit Vietnam at that point, which in hindsight I would kind of wish we had, because when we when we did visit India, we found so many suppliers there that it was such a good way to find suppliers and products that you can sort of we found our suppliers first and then found the products afterwards almost. So it was that was the way we were thinking.
So that's really quite interesting. It sort of reminds you, it feels like we come full circle almost, because one of the things that I know in the earlier days of this sort of game of private labeling and selling on Amazon when it was getting popular, and I did training back in early 2014, and I met quite a few people who went to the Canton Fair and kind of found stuff that caught their eye and then kind of went and did the numbers afterwards. By the way, sometimes that can be real disaster. I would urge anyone not to ever just buy a container load of stuff without doing any research. It sounds insane, but I actually did have a member of a sort of early version of a mastermind that I did once who did that. I mean, fair play for taking action, but that's probably not the way forward.
Too much action.
Too much action with too little reconnaissance, I would say in that case. Yeah. But what you're saying is, it sounds like you didn't start with the usual. Well, you did the Jungle Scout led thing, and then
Yeah.
you thought, well, hang on, everyone else is doing that, which is completely correct, by the way, including 60 or 70 of the big East Coast factories in China as well. They all use Jungle
Mm.
Scout, but you decided to start with sourcing, and you went macro to micro by the sound of it. Where in the world is good, what's a good country, what are good suppliers in that, and did you have any kind of idea of the sorts of product you were sourcing at all, or was it
Yeah.
purely
So
supplier led?
it was supplier led, but so we did. I mean, we did do a lot of research. So we looked at lots of suppliers, and we went. I mean, their websites and their profiles on different websites would show you the kind of products they would make. So that would give you an idea of what sort of stuff was out there. And then we looked. We knew we wanted to be in like the homeware space because we liked decorative stuff, we liked design, and we wanted to design stuff ourselves. So when we were looking at these products, we were thinking, oh, that's quite interesting. That's got this aspects to it. And then we were using what we found and then doing the product research afterwards. So we'd go to other websites like John Lewis, for example, in the UK, and see what was selling well there, and see. I mean, you could kind of a lot of websites like that have reviews on them, so you can see, oh, this product's got a lot of reviews, so that means that a lot of people are buying it. And then if you look on Amazon, you could see there wasn't necessarily something very similar to that. So we kind of go, and also another benefit to that is you're getting these big companies obviously spend a lot of money on design. So you're getting design inspiration the whole time you're doing that sort of product research. So we would go, yeah, as we said, go to the countries first, then we'd find some suppliers we liked the look of, see what they were selling, see what they were manufacturing, and then do the product research by validating on Amazon, and validating it with other websites. If something was on John Lewis, for example, but they're not on Amazon, I was thinking that could be a very good product because John Lewis have obviously thought this is a good idea, and more and more people are starting to buy homewares on Amazon. So it was just that sort of thing. So we weren't buying like a whole shipping container and just shipping it over. We were really careful. It's just we didn't go down the product search. Weren't looking for products necessarily first. It was kind of a mixture of looking for products and then finding suppliers first.
I mean, what strikes me overwhelmingly is that the way you've approached this is how can I put this? A synthesis between what's out there, aka reality, and what was in your head as a possibility, in a very organic way. So you started off with the idea of a home-based business, and you went to see what was out there with a Google search, and some things you thought just sounded a bit spammy and obvious and not very sustainable, and you plumped for the Amazon private label thing, and then you went through what was out there in terms of products on Alibaba, and then you realised that was also not very sustainable, and you've then gone from the idea of sort of home decoration and design to who's out there, what stuff are they selling. So it sounds like a sort of textbook organic kind of process, really, and it's fantastic to hear because it's refreshingly different from the do these 10 steps to heaven and you've magically got a business, which so many people have traditionally put out there. And I try and defend people against doing that because I just think it's normally a disaster because they're going to end up selling some organic, generic widget, which was what you got out of the way with your first £1,000, right? It's interesting. Sorry.
I mean, we also just didn't want, because when we're looking for these products, when I was using the Jungle Scout tool originally, so I used two of them. One of them I still use. There was the Chrome extension, which I think is really good, and there was the other tool which I did use at first. I can't remember what it's called. I think it's called the Web App. But I kept seeing the same products come up over and over again, and I thought if I'm seeing that, then that means everyone else is seeing it too. So I kind of wanted to I didn't want to find products with loads and loads of competition because it just sounded like quite an expensive way to start a business by competing with loads of other people already.
Yeah, well, I think what you did, I mean, in terms of economics, is very simple. Like you're adding value. If you bring something to a platform that wasn't previously on it in not the exact same form, then you brought value to the platform, and obviously Amazon and the customer is going to reward you. I think it's kind of pretty simple, really, what you've done, except that most people don't do it. So congratulations, you go ahead of what most people are doing. So just a couple of things to dig into then. First of all, you're saying we quite a lot. So I presume you have a business partner hidden away in the background there. Tell me a bit more about that.
So I run the business with my fiancée, Claire. So we're getting married in August this year. And so with that, we run the business together.
And does she have a home decor sort of background or anything like that?
No, not really. I think we just both quite like design, and it's hard to it's hard to say exactly why we went into that. It's just we liked those sort of products.
Yeah, but it makes sense. But again, I think it's great that you've chosen something you actually care about and have a feel for. I mean, whether it's been your day job or not, I just wondered. But again, I think that's another major hint to anyone listening. I mean,
I just think it was just something that. Oh, sorry, you just cut out. Then that's why I carry on speaking. No, it was just something that we found enjoy. We enjoyed the design aspects of it, and we thought it'd be more interesting to do something that you kind of had an interest in rather than just something else.
Yeah, I think that totally makes sense. And apart from anything else, I hear it takes a long time to become a millionaire or billionaire, so you might as well enjoy what you're doing on the way, right? I couldn't speak from experience not being a billionaire yet. So how does that work in terms of do you sort of end up talking about Amazon sort of in the middle of the night while you're resting your heads on the pillow, or how do you deal with that situation? Because there are quite a few husband and wife business teams out there, and I haven't done that myself, so I'm always intrigued on how that works.
So we don't talk about it in bed, but we do talk about it in the evenings because she has a part-time job. So Tuesday to Thursday she's out of the office, so we often have to work in the evenings. But it's not usually that difficult work. One thing that we did found quite difficult at first was splitting up the tasks between all of us. And there's a book called E-Myth, which I recommend everybody reading. It's by Robert Gerber, I think his name is.
Michael Gerber, yeah,
Michael Gerber.
fantastic,
Sorry,
fantastic book.
it's really famous. And there's a part of it basically where he sets out the business structure of a normal business and gives everyone roles. And he says that even if you're just a one-person business, you should do this because you kind of get into separate hats. So our aim for this year is to try. We've got that structure set in, and our aim for this year is to basically split ourselves out of the business more, so that we have more defined roles. And she's more organised than I am, so she does more of the operational side of it, and I look at more of the marketing aspects. And we're just basically trying to split that out.
Very sensible. I mean, I do have experience of working in a partnership in a business, and actually, one of the massive dangers is that you end up moving around like a sort of pod, and you sort of both do move to this place and do marketing, and then you both go here and do product design. You both go here and do marketing again, and it drives you a bit crazy. So yeah, you're very, very wise. And yes, I can't recommend the E-Myth enough. I mean, it's just brilliant book. I mean, there's so much to talk about with that, but. Yes, it's absolutely a great idea. I don't think, I mean, we're no longer really doing that business together because we just didn't really have enough capital to really make a dent, I think, between us, which is one of the things I wanted to talk about. Tell me, if you would reveal it, a bit about some numbers. Tell me what sort of starting budget you started with, because obviously you're getting to £12,000, £13,000 a month in revenue within a few months of starting. That sounds very impressive. I mean, did you start with a huge budget? What sort of amount?
So we started with around £7,000. That's not including the thousands that I spent on the previous products that we just fiddled around with. But and that included our first order and then our second order as well. And most of the rest of the money since then has come from the profit and the money we get back from Amazon. So we have put a bit of money in. And I think we have got to the point now when we probably do need to get a bit, if we wanted to grow a bit faster than we are, I think we would have to either borrow a bit or put some more in ourselves. So that's what we're considering at the moment. But we're not. I mean, I'm not going to borrow money from a bank. I don't think, not at this stage. But it might be if I can borrow some money from my parents or something like that. I don't know. But
yeah,
we're just considering it at the moment.
Yeah. No, that's fine. I'm not going to try and sell you a loan. Yeah, that depends if there was somebody on the air with a bank, but yeah. So that's an interesting question. I mean, yeah, a bank of mum and dad can be a useful place to start, or generally relatives are going to be sort of softer loans. There's pros and cons for all that stuff, I guess, as well.
Yeah, that's why we're considering it, not like
yeah, not just leaping in. All right, so that sort of brings us to the 2020 point, really, and where you're at now. And as I say, it's early March as we're recording this. Are you still working in the day job? It sounds. Tell me a little bit more about the day job. You had a photo boot, so you left your day job in
Yes.
January 2019. Tell me a bit more about how that works alongside Amazon, if it does.
So I never actually had a full-time like corporate job alongside my Amazon business,
Okay.
but I know a lot of people that have. So what I did have the Amazon business alongside my photo booth business, which was more than a full-time job. So that I worked much longer hours doing that than I did in my old job, actually. So it was possible to do that. But now I'm a consultant for an e-commerce consulting company who focuses on getting bigger brands who aren't on Amazon, and we set up their account and run their monthly. We run their account on a month-to-month basis for them, and that includes everything from like PPC to creating images and infographics, writing the copy for their sites. So really, basically, just being an Amazon business owner, but it's not your business. So that's been great because it's a remote job, so I don't need to be in London. I just still live here, and my boss is an English guy, but he lives in Vietnam, and so we basically just run the big accounts. It's been a really good experience. I've learned a lot, and I'd recommend everyone to look into getting a remote job as a first step if you're thinking about like leaving your sort of full-time job to go remote or to start an Amazon business. Doing a remote job is a really good way to like learn the ropes and see if you can work remotely or and B, just to have some money whilst you're running that business at the same time.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, actually, you're kind of practicing being a digital nomad. I suppose you're separating productivity. I suppose it's like the 4-hour work week thing back in 2007. I suppose that was largely the equivalent of a lot of the Amazon sort of business pitch now, which is that sort of location independence. But of course, that means you have to have a certain degree of discipline, because if you have to be in a job at 9 a.m. in order to be productive, you're going to be a bit screwed if you're trying to
Yeah.
build a business from home. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I presume that's not the that's not your boss out there searching for you. You can hear a bit of sirens going past there. So
No,
you,
I live near the South Circular, so there's like a lot of traffic sometimes.
yeah. So you're still based down in London. So are you, have you got plan? I mean, you're saying that you said to me you were a digital nomad, by nature, or that you're wanting to be. So do you have plans to travel with your fiance, soon to be wife?
um,
Congratulations, by the way.
oh, thank you. We definitely have plans, but nothing written down yet. But that is kind of an aspiration of ours. I think before I was talking about when we went to India and Vietnam to source products. We actually went out there as well. It was such a good experience to go out there and source products. So we might maybe, don't know, do some kind of traveling that kind of fits around our sourcing kind of schedule. That was one thing we thought about. At the moment, I probably don't have. I'm working with my job. I'm probably working a bit too much to be like doing lots of traveling all the time. But I would certainly consider living somewhere else.
I think you raised an important point that when people have a full-time job and that's very location dependent, then they think in terms of holidays, which equals traveling a lot and being in airports all the time versus being static in one place. But actually, it's quite possible, as you say, to work remotely from somewhere else, but in a stable configuration. Because I think it is helpful to have stability if you're going to get any serious work done, right? It just doesn't have to be stable in a particular place, right? So
Yeah,
I
exactly.
think you've differentiated a very important point there. So where is all this going? Do you have a sort of master plan? It sounds like you sort of thought about it and got moving very quickly and have had some great success early on. So do you have a sort of master plan there, or if not, do you have a sort of vague vision of where you're going with this stuff?
Sure. Yeah. So we'd really like to get the business to a point when could be sold. We don't have a figure in mind yet, but I guess getting the business to a point where it can be sold. I think you'll. I don't know if you know when that is the case, or um, that's sort of up. That's our aim. We're trying to make it really professional at the moment. As I said, with introducing the structures, like in the business, separating our two responsibilities out, and introducing like virtual assistants where we can into that structure. So basically, there's some parts where it's like my name is under reporting. For example, it'd be great if I could remove my name from there in the organization chart and add a VA in there. So we're starting to do that this year. We've already got one who helps us on quite basic stuff, and also other freelancers who aren't like VAs. So the plan is to make it more professional and hopefully get to the point at the end of this year where both of us can work in the business without having to have part-time jobs, especially for my fiance, whose part-time job is based in London. It'd be great if she could get out of that to be into more like working more full-time in the business.
So then at that point, that frees you up to go and live in India for a few months if you fancy doing so, or
If we
Vietnam
wanted
or
to,
something.
yeah.
Yeah, and is that very much what you're aiming to do? It sounds like you're a little bit hungry to be able to live somewhere else just for a while, at least.
Oh, it sounds quite fun, doesn't it? So it's definitely something we're considering. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to say, as somebody that not through being digital nomad, but as a student, I did an Erasmus year and an exchange year in Germany. I have to say that it is a different experience to live in a foreign culture. Obviously, Germany is nothing like as different from Britain as India would be. But the interesting thing also about where you're sourcing is that they're very desirable travel destinations. Whereas China has the Great Wall and I guess Beijing and the hidden city and stuff. But to be frank, most of the mastermind members that I talk to about sourcing in China, they go out there, they go to the factory, they get the job done, they come back home. They're not really wanting
Yeah.
to be tourists out there. Whereas India, is a classic tourist destination if you like that kind of place, right?
Yeah,
So I,
Vietnam's amazing as well. So yeah,
yes, I've heard that. I mean, I've spoken to a couple of guys that I remember interviewing one of our guests whose name escapes me now, but he was in Ho Chi Minh City, which seemed a pretty cool place to be, I have to say. Although
yeah.
right now everywhere has its challenges with travel, but that's another story. So, tell me a bit about your VAs. So it sounds like you're trying to structure things between yourself and your fiance at the moment. But how do the VAs fit into picture? How are you using those people?
So so the VAs we have, so basically because the bottom level of the structure has sort of quite specific roles. So one could be, for example, reporting, which would be things like the monthly report, which we gather. Um, Another one could be like running the PVC, for example. So we're trying to get VAs into those roles, and then so that we can take a more strategic look at things like the PPC. Um, I'm not naturally very good at the PPC, so I quite like just setting the direction of where I want it to go, like what our spend is, what our ACOS is, and things like that. And having someone who's a bit more specialist run that for us. Um, we did. I mean, we did consider using an agency, but it was quite expensive. So we're working with someone who actually who's from Romania. So again, another person from Eastern Europe who we found who's really good, and they uh, they can do it much better than we can, and for the amount they cost, they actually still save us money. So
Amazing. Yeah, I mean,
um,
yeah, we were both saying before on air that we both found some really great people in Eastern Europe. I mean, unsurprisingly, this is why London has been run by Eastern Europeans. But tell
yeah,
me, how did you find these guys then? Was it the classic like Upwork or something like that, or was there some
yeah,
more mysterious way of finding them?
it was on Upwork, but we interviewed them as well. So we didn't just go. We got one VA from the Philippines who helps us with more of the emails and the day-to-day operation side of it. We interviewed a few people, and then there's one we chose. We actually carried her over from our previous photo booth business, so she's been really good. And then the other one, again, we interviewed, and we had a few people put some proposals together for us, um, and just yeah, it was just really credible what she did. And what was good about it was you could let them do it for 1 month, see what happens, and check the results yourself. So it didn't feel like getting stuck into a long-term contract that you can get stuck into with agencies.
Absolutely,
um,
yeah. You got more control, and I guess that when, particularly when it's small, you want to make sure you're keeping a really close eye on your costs, but not then saying, "Oh, but I could do that." That's always the cheapest option, and then getting trapped in the job, right? So, I guess that you found a nice middle ground through those two
yeah,
extremes, and I guess, as you say, yeah, hiring somebody for a trial period and then reviewing is really excellent. I really, really can't recommend that enough. It's like, as I say, as Tim Ferriss again mentions in the 4 Hour Work Week, I just mention it because it's a famous set of principles. It's not, I'm not endorsing the 4 Hour Work Week idea necessarily, but like the E Myth, I think it's a useful grab bag of some very good concepts. Anyway, my defense over there. But I mean, I think it's very, very useful to audition rather than interview because anyone can talk a good game, but in the end, you've got to see what the quality of their work is. So if somebody comes into me in the old music business, my old profession, then if somebody sort of starts talking about how good they are at the piano, I'd say, great, sit down and play then, and then you'll know.
yeah,
So I think that's really, really great, that the trial thing. And it sounds like you've had some great success. It's very interesting that some in the Philippines and some in Eastern Europe. I mean, I think those are the two places for people that I've worked with as well.
yeah,
And they can bring different things, can't they? As I say, if you're based in the UK, I mean, one of the issues, I've got an amazingly good VA in the Philippines, who, funnily enough, has also just got engaged and is off to be married soon. So she's having a bit of a break, and somebody else is stepping in. But the time difference is pretty crippling. So Eastern Europe's pretty useful, right? I do like the fact that you can jump on a phone call or a Zoom call if you need to.
yeah,
Sounds like
yeah,
you've got the
exactly.
same thing. And so, where are you planning to? Are you plan to expand the team in a particular geographical area, or are you just going to grab people as they seem good? Are you going to focus on
Um,
Eastern Europe?
I think it depends on what the role is, which way we decide to get the roles out. So um, I think it really depends. I couldn't say that. Yeah, I've just been really impressed with all the people we've had from Eastern Europe. So we've had a photographer from there. We've had a PPC person. Our graphic designer who does photoshops on our photos is from um, is from Ukraine as well. So I just found it really good. Their English has been great. Their work ethic's been really good. The quality has been fantastic, and the time difference has helped. So you can have quick calls if you need to. Whereas with Philippines, it's like 8 hours or something. So
Yeah, it
um,
does get tricky, doesn't it? Wow,
yeah, you have to
amazing.
make calls
So
at 9 a.m.
yes, absolutely. Yeah, it gets a bit brutal, doesn't it? Good. Well, look, this is quite the success. Have you got any sort of parting wisdom for anybody who would be thinking of getting started from where you were a mere few months ago? I mean, it sounds like you
Yeah,
about 12 months ago that you started this process off, more or less, right? And
yeah.
so, what would your advice be to get started with this stuff?
The main thing I think is if you get the opportunity, really, you should definitely try and go to trade shows and meet the suppliers, because A, you will find some products that you might not have seen before, and B, if you speak to them, I found I've got better prices by seeing them face to face, and C, usually they're in quite nice countries, so it's somewhere to visit, and you can kind of get a holiday out of it at the same time. I mean, a 2 week holiday to India doesn't sound too bad, and if you can get a trade show in at the same time, you'll feel like you've had like a quite a cool experience that none of your friends would have had. We were out there in
I like it.
yeah, we were out there in
I like
October.
your criteria. Like, I think the main thing is stuff that other people haven't got. Hello, I'm
Exactly.
doing. Yeah, excellent.
uh, yeah, we were out there in October at the Delhi show, and that was really really good. We found I wanted to buy everything, to be honest, but you couldn't. I didn't need 100 of everything, so they wouldn't let me buy just one. But it was really amazing to go and visit.
Very inspiring, and I think that's a lovely note on which to end it, because I think in the end, a lot of us do stuff, and you've done it yourself. It sounds like you set up a small business in order to have, an alternative to the day job on the side, and then in the end, it just didn't float your boat, and you didn't enjoy it. So I think in the end, enjoying the process rather than waiting to the end of the rainbow where the pot of gold comes to enjoy it is such a great idea. You may as well set up a life that whilst you're working on it is really enjoyable. And it sounds like you've managed to do that as well. So you're a bit of a walking embodiment of the sort of Amazon slash online marketing digital nomad dream right now. So thank you very much for coming on to share this. Be fascinating to get you back on in 6 to 12 months and see where you're at if you're up for that.
Yeah, great. That sounds amazing. Yeah, I'd love to come back and yeah, update you about how it's all going, because we've got big plans for the next sort of 6 to 10 months. So I'd really like to. I'll come back and let you know how it went.
Yeah, great. Well, in that case, it's a date, and let's hope we can get you sort of from live from the Delhi Fair or something. That would be very cool. Or maybe in a
That-
yoga retreat in the Highlands. But anyway, for the meanwhile, Ted, it's been a real pleasure, and thank you so much for sharing some actual real grassroots truths of how it is for setting up an Amazon business. And congratulations.
Thanks. It's been a pleasure. Look forward to speaking to you again.